Let's be real, you've been in a car crash. The very last thing you want to worry about is the tow truck bill. But what should it actually cost? Come on, let's crack open the official numbers and find out what's really going on.
All right, to really get this, let's put ourselves right in the driver's seat during that, super stressful moment.
Okay, picture it. Your car's a mess, you're probably a bit shaken up, and it is definitely not going anywhere. All you're thinking about is getting yourself and your car somewhere safe.
But, as you're waiting for that tow truck to arrive, this little question starts to creep into your mind. In a moment like this, when you're vulnerable, how do you know you're not getting ripped off? Is the price totally up to the driver, or is there some kind of system at play here? Well, that's exactly what we're about to dig into. We're going to look at the official price list, talk about why it's regulated in the first place, ask if the fees are actually fair, and see what the final verdict means for your wallet.
All right, let's cut to the chase and get straight to the numbers. What are you actually expected to pay if this happens to you?
So here it is. And look, these aren't just guidelines or estimates. These are fixed, government-regulated fees. You can see right there, the base towing fee is just under $273, and that includes the first 8 kilometers of the trip. And if your car needs to be stored for a bit, you're looking at about $31 a day for undercover storage.
So you're probably wondering, why are these prices locked in like this? Well, it all comes down to one simple thing: where your accident happens.
Take a look at this map. See that big blue shaded area? That is the Melbourne-controlled area. If your crash happens anywhere inside that zone, bam, those regulated fees we just saw automatically apply. It's not a choice, it's the law.
And this whole system was set up for 2 really important reasons. First, to make sure a tow truck gets to you quickly. And second, maybe more importantly, to prevent price gouging right after a crash when you're at your most vulnerable. The jobs are given out through a roster, so it's fair for the towing companies too.
But look, just because a price is fixed doesn't automatically mean it's fair, right? So how do they decide that? Well, it turns out there's a whole investigation.
Yep. Every 4 years, an independent group called the Essential Services Commission does this massive review. They really dig into all the data, talk to everyone involved, and decide if the fees are still making sense. So how on earth did they do it? They basically had 2 ways they could go. The towing industry wanted them to look at every single one of their costs, but honestly, that was just way too complicated. So instead, the commission chose something called benchmarking. This is so important because it means the fairness of Melbourne's price is judged by one simple question: how does it stack up against other big cities? And as you can probably guess, not everybody agreed on the current prices. The towing industry argued that the fees are way too low, that they just don't cover the rising costs of doing business. But on the other side, you have the insurance industry, who often end up paying these bills, and they felt the prices were pretty much right on the money. So what did that benchmarking actually show? Well, this table really tells the story. At about $383, Melbourne's average tow fee is cheaper than Sydney, Adelaide, and Perth. But it's a little bit more than Queensland. It lands right in the middle of the pack, which kind of suggests the price is pretty fair when you look at it nationally. But the prices don't just stay frozen for 4 years. They actually get tweaked every single year using this special formula. The easiest way to think about it is this: the price goes up with inflation, but then they subtract a tiny little 0.5% to encourage the tow companies to be more efficient. It's a clever way to keep prices up to date without doing a huge review all the time. And check this out. Here's a really fascinating little detail in the rules. There's something called a zero price floor. What this means is that even if transport costs go down and that formula spits out a negative number, the fees don't actually decrease. They just stay the same. It's basically a safety net for the operators. So after all that investigation, all the benchmarking, and listening to everyone, what was the final verdict from the 2025 review? Well, after weighing all the evidence, the commission's verdict was crystal clear. They recommended no changes. No change to the towing fees, no change to the storage fees, and no change to that adjustment formula. Basically, they said the system is working just like it's supposed to. So what's the bottom line for you? Well, because transport inflation was actually negative last year, that zero price floor we just talked about, it kicks in. And that means for the 2025-26 period, the prices are going to stay exactly the same as the ones we saw earlier. No increase, but also no decrease. We have covered a lot of ground here, from crash scenes to commissions, so let's just boil it all down to what you really need to remember. Okay, 3 key things. First, if you have a crash inside that big blue zone on the map, the price is fixed. It's set by law. You don't have to haggle. Second, this whole system gets reviewed for fairness every 4 years by comparing it to the rest of the country. And third, and this is the big one for right now, for the coming year, those prices are staying put.
And that kind of brings us to our final thought here. Now that you know there's this regulated, reviewed system that's in place to protect you from being overcharged in a really bad moment, does that change how you think about the value and the fairness of services like this? It's definitely something to think about.